Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to today's lesson for From Bad Boy by Walter Dean Myers. I wanted to point out once again that this is a memoir. So it is a piece of text that is a memory from the author's life, and it is written in first person. This memoir is also written as a typical memoir where it is written in paragraphs. So this is our first reading. And I want you to keep our essential question in mind while reading. And again, for this unit, that is, what are some of the challenges and triumphs of growing up? As you read Michaela DePrince and Brown Girl Dreaming, you read about very clear challenges that those two authors faced as they were growing up. In From Bad Boy, you will also hear about some challenges and triumphs that he faced growing up. But while you are reading From Bad Boy, I want you to keep a couple questions in mind. The first question being, what expectations does society or the world have for me based on my age, my gender, my race, and other aspects of my identity? And then I also want you to keep in mind how you feel about those expectations. And then I want you also to think about how Walter Dean Myers felt with all of those expectations. So again, since this is a memoir, I want to revisit the background information that is the basis for Walter Dean Myers' story From Bad Boy. And this can be found on page 61 of your My Perspectives book. And in this memoir, Walter Dean Myers describes his childhood growing up in Harlem, New York in the 1940s and 1950s. This excerpt or piece of text takes place when Myers is in elementary school. Earlier in the chapter, which we don't have that part, but earlier in the chapter of Bad Boy, his teacher, Mrs. Conway, lent him books to read after noticing his interest in reading. So our key focus for this piece of text with analyzing craft and structure is focusing on the central idea or the main message or idea that's expressed in nonfiction text. And remember, a central idea is always related to the author's purpose or the reason that the author writes a text. In most essays, the author states the central idea directly. However, in narrative nonfiction, such as memoirs, the author suggests the central detail through details. So this is an indirectly expressed central idea. And to identify the central idea, readers need to examine the details in the text and then decide what they think the central idea is. Now, we have given you the central idea that is stated in your book on page 66 for From Bad Boy. And that central idea is that society wrongly expects boys to act a certain way. So your job as you're reading is to try and figure out what details support this central idea. And you also need to keep in mind that the author's word choice can be used to help you determine his or her point of view, which will help you figure out those details that support the central idea. So as you do your first read, we want you to apply these strategies. First, we want you to notice those general ideas, what the text is about, who's involved. And please pay special attention to the expectations or rules for behavior that the narrator feels are imposed by those around him. Then we want you to connect those ideas of what you already know and what you've already read. Again, focusing on comparing those expectations imposed on the narrator to those imposed on you. Then when you go through your second reading or your close reading, this is where you're going to start annotating. You're going to start marking up your text. Circle key vocabulary, underline key passages. You want to mark details that might show you how the author is feeling. And then finally, the other part of your annotating is responding by checking and maybe writing brief summaries in the margin next to paragraphs so that it helps you understand what you've read. You also, in your annotating, want to include possible connections to helped you understand Walter Dean Meyer's life. Now, your assignment first is to do all this work in your My Perspectives book, and then you're going to have a Google Doc, just like previous units and lessons, to complete. So first, you're going to read or listen to From Bad Boy, paragraphs 1 through 3 only, once through fully, without annotating. And you can find this on page 61 and 62 in your My Perspectives book. Then, the second time you read this is your close reading. This is where you're now annotating the memoir. You're circling words you don't know, underlining things that stand out to you, and you're going to write your notes on the side of the memoir. Once you've read paragraphs 1 through 3, then you're going to answer question number 1 on page 64 of your book. This answer for this question will also go on to the Google Doc for question 3. Once you've done all your work in your book, you're going to go to your Google Doc and you're going to complete number 1 and 2 on the doc, showing your annotating from your book and then the answer to the question. So your Google Doc is this. So from paragraphs 1 through 3, pages 61 to 62, you are going to write at least 2 bullets sharing your annotated notes you wrote on the side of the article. These should not be quotations. These should be your words, your connections to Walter Dean Myers, his life, or any connections that you may have with him. These are the things that help you understand the story better. In question number 2, this is where you're using direct quotes from the text. So you need your quotation marks. And these are the things that you've circled, highlighted, or underlined. And then you need to include that connection. So questions 1 and 2 are 2-part questions. You need to include that connection to how it is helping you understand the story better in order to get full credit. And then finally, question number 3 is actually question number 1 from page 64 in your My Perspectives book. You must answer in a complete sentence to receive full credit. And the question is, what are the 2 categories of friends in young Meyer's life?